So guys, welcome back to my live stream. Harold Serrano, in case you are new to my live stream. And I develop game engines, and I've been going live on YouTube, for the past week or so, basically sharing with you everything about game engine development in case you want to develop your own. So today, what I want to work on, guys, is just let me double check up here. So today what I want to work on is basically I want to add a feature to the engine where you can which will allow you to save and load the scene objects that you have in your scene. Basically, as of now, um, if I run the engine, what you are going to see, that I added the InGUI editor to the engine, and you can load objects to it, right? So what I want to do now is I want to add the feature where you will be able to save all of your scene, right? And save the positions of your objects and the orientations and whatever. And then be able to load them up at a later time. So what I'm going to be working on today is the serialization feature of the engine. So that's what I want to work on, and I wanted to invite you, just to see how I coded my game engine. I am not an expert whatsoever, but I've been working on it for the past 8 years. So I do know a little, a thing or two about game engine development. So if you have any questions about game engine development, just post them in the chat. I'll try to answer them. If I know the answer, and if I don't, then I would invite you to join my Discord server where members of my Discord server, I'm sure they will be able to help you with your questions. All right, guys. So having said that, let me share with you what I have as of now. With the engine. So let me go into my main scene right now, and let me just double check that's where I'm at. So I want to run the engine, and I have been working on the engine for 8 years now. The engine has basically a rendering system, physics engine, collision detection system, particle system, camera system, has, you name it, has a lot of things. But what it lacked, what it didn't have, was an editor. And I put that all to the end because I wanted to make sure that my game engine was stable, that it was solid before I move on to the visual aspect of the engine. I should have worked on that a long time ago, but I didn't feel that I didn't want to put time and effort into the editor when I knew that the foundation of the engine was lacking. That's what I've been working on, for such a long time. Actually, not long ago, like a couple of months ago, I improved the rendering system. I rewrote most of it. And lately, I also removed a lot of duplicate code that I had in the engine. And I also improved the whole physics engine and the collision detection system. So now that I'm happy with with the results, I started working on integrating a scripting language, and now I'm also working on the editor, making it more user friendly. So let me run the engine so you can see what I have. And again, if you are new to game engine development, feel free to ask me any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. All right, so here's the engine, and I have assets here, and I can add, for example, the field, right? I can load it up. I can load up a player. I can load up, the bleachers in the stadium, whatever. And actually, if I rotate them, you will see the whole thing. Oh, sorry. It should be this one. Let's say I want to add this guy. You'll be able to load everything up, right? So everything looks good. Everything looks cool. But now what I want to add is a feature where you will be able to save your whole scene. So later on, when you when you want to work on it on your game later on, you would just load up the file which has all of the data for the scene, and you could move on, right, and keep working on your game. So to do that, I need to serialize all of these objects. So what's my plan to do all this, right? Well, let's work on that, because honestly, I need to figure that out. That's the whole idea of going, doing these live streams. And I'm hoping I'm sharing my screen. Cool. All right, so let's see. Let me stop this. Let me stop the engine, and let me bring up Adam. All right, so let's work on the serialization topic here, serialization. And give me 1 second. All right, so what do we need to do, right? The first thing that we need to do is prepare the data, right? What I need to do, I need to iterate through the scene graph and see what objects I'm going to save, right? But before I do that, I actually need to add new members, to that you for the entity class to store the class type. I'll go into in a second. So after I'm done with that, actually that should be something that I do preparing the data. So let me just type it here, preparing data. That's something I'm gonna do once. All right, so again, like I told you, I need to read all the entities present in the scene graph. Basically, all the objects that are in the scene, right? I need to iterate them and read those entities and basically read their properties, right? Like positions, orientations, class type, etc. Right? So once I go through the whole iteration, I need to load the entities properties into a structure. And then what I'm going to do, so I'm going to load all of the properties basically right into a structure, and then I'm going to load that structure into a vector. So load the structure into a vector. That's it. So now once I have prepared the data, right? I have read the objects and load the entities into a vector, etc. Now I'm able to convert them into binary data. Now let me take a minute to talk about why this is a good idea. So I was thinking about this, right? Basically, all of the data that I'm preparing is going to be stored in a file, right? Now, I can store all of this data in XML format, in JSON format, whatever. The problem is that when you're working with games, you want everything to be loaded really quick, right? So the best way to store your data is actually in binary data. That way, when you load it up, you don't waste time parsing the XML tags, for example, the XML elements, I think that's the name of it, or JSON, properties, whatever. The whole parsing of reading those XML files or JSON is what takes a long time. With binary, right, you don't have to deal with that. You immediately will load up all of your data. You can, load it and unload it really quick. So that's why I'm actually serializing all of the entities in binary format and not XML or JSON format. So something for you to keep in mind. So basically, for me to convert to binary data, I have to iterate through the vector, right? Iterate through the vector and convert the properties into binary, right? That's the serialization part. Once I have that, all of the data will be in a file, and obviously when we read the file, it's going to be a bunch of hex numbers. But if you use Sublime, you actually should be able to actually kind of decode the data. There's like a particular tool that you can use. So that's how we're going to check it. So what I want to do today, and hopefully we have enough time to work on it, would be to prepare the data and then convert it into binary file. Give me 1 second, guys. All right. So now that we have our plan set, so let's go over this. All right. So first thing that we're gonna do is we are going to add a new member to the entity class that will basically identify the class type. Now, let me explain to you why I want to store this, right? I'm gonna run the engine again, and you're going to see that you are able to load up a particular object depending on the type, right? On the class type. But before I do that, let me go over here. By default, all objects are belong to the class U4D model, right? However, you can expand the behaviors of U4D model by creating your own classes. For example, I have here two classes, player and field, right? What this means is that I can basically load up a model with a particular class type. For example, this field, right? When I click here, you have the options of selecting the class type, right? And the class types that you see here are basically were registered into a factory class. A factory class will basically allows you to create different objects depending on the class type, right? So I register the field and player class in this particular example, right? So when I select field, I can come and say, okay, I want to load up this particular object with the field class, right? So when I load this up, boom, you're gonna see that. And let me actually, let me go back so you can actually see it, right? If I go and select player 0, then what I can do, I select, okay, well, player 0, it belongs to the player class, right? Because I want him to move and kick and do whatever. So then when I would load him up into like that. So now this guy's player. If, for example, I would select opposite player 0, but I would select that as a U4D model, then this particular model here doesn't have all of the behaviors that this particular player has, right? So when we are loading all of this data, or when we are saving all of this data, we need to also know what class that object belongs to, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to add a particular a variable that will keep track of that particular entity type, class type, basically. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, but before I do that, just let me double check if I'm actually in the right branch. I think I am. Git branch, boom. Yeah, 351. Okay, cool. So we're good with that. So, let me go into that factory class and let me see how I'm actually doing this. So that way I know. Okay, so I know all of them are models. Okay. All right. Okay, you know, I'm not gonna put it into the U4D entity. I'm gonna put it into U4D model class. What's gonna happen is that I may have to. Okay, I think that's okay though. But I think let me put this into my protected private. All right, so this one will basically brief. I don't know. Type representing variable that stores the class type. Probably, you know, sometimes the problem with the we developer space is naming our variables and giving them like proper, you know, proper comments documentation. So this one is gonna be it's gonna store this as a string, and let's call it class type. I think that should be okay. All right, so class type. Now by default, my class type is gonna be U4D model. All right. Let's keep it like that. I didn't do that. All right, let me just wait for it to finish indexing because sometimes Xcode, you know, acts a little bit weird. Class type and model. All right, we're gonna keep it like that. And actually, let me just get a let me set up some setters and getters here because I'm gonna need them anyway. So let me just set them up here. Void set class type and then std string u class type. I if you notice, I always like to name my argument with the u. It's like it's telling like you have to, you know, set this. You have to set a parameter for this. Std string get class type. All right, so let me just copy this, guys, and we are going to load them up here. Again, if you are completely new to game engine development, guys, feel free to ask me anything, especially if you are a newbie, because I was there once and I know exactly how it feels when it comes to game engine development. And you know, when you want to develop your own, you may feel lost and not knowing where to start. And if you go to my website, you actually would find several books that I recommend you to use. Actually, let me go there. So in case you are completely new to this channel, let me just wait for this guy to load up. All right. So if you go to my website, heroserrano.com, you are going to find a link, or you're going to see a link that shows, you know, books. And if you go here, you're going to get a list of all of the books that I use to develop my game engine. The first section of the article will tell you the books to get started. I recommend these books. This book for math to develop your mathematics engine, the rendering engine, and the physics engine. Now, if you want to know, have a comprehensive list of all the books that I had to read, then you get all of these books here. So, and if you want to know the steps, okay, fine, I can read those books, but then how do I become an indie game engine developer? I also have some videos here where you can actually watch them, which will actually show you how to do this. So, and let me just look at something. All right, so now we are here. So let me set this up. Oh my God, what happened? Oh, so class type equals u class type, and the other one would be just returning the class type. All right. And I don't know, I do not know if that's the proper, that's a good variable to use, but we're going to find out. Okay, so now when we come to the factory class, what I want to double check, so this is where I create the models instances. Basically this is where the factory class takes over and creates all of this. So now here, what I want to do is when I'm loading the model classes, I want to set the particular, set the class type. So model set class type, then this would be u for the model. Boom. Whereas for this one, okay, model init, model set class type, what the type would be u type. Boom. And actually for this one, this one should also be u type. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay, hold on. Let me put a breakpoint here so to see if I go with the model, it actually comes here. So I'm going to build the engine and then I'm going to select, I'm going to load an entity into the scene, but I'm going to make sure it is selected with the U4D model. I just want to double check if I'm passing the right type, which it should, but I'm just double checking. All right, so now in the meantime, as this is loading up, again, if you have any questions, guys, feel free to ask me anything related to game engine development. Most, a popular question that I tend to get a lot, through emails is, how should I start developing a game engine? And the answer that I tend to give often is, number one, you need to start out by developing the mathematics engine, right? And to do that, you need to learn or review linear algebra. Basically, you need to review matrices, vectors, and transformation spaces. That's the heart of your game engine, right? You're going to deal with a lot of transformations. After you have worked on the mathematics engine, then you need to start working on your rendering system, on your rendering engine. But to do that, you need to learn computer graphics, right? OpenGL and shaders. Now, I know that if you're completely new to computer graphics, OpenGL is gonna seem like very complex, and it is kind of, I wouldn't call it hard. I would just call it kind of confusing, because for you to be able to actually load up something on the screen, to show something on the screen, to render, basically, you are going to, number one, have a good understanding on linear algebra, understand OpenGL, which basically, or what it does. OpenGL is basically a medium that helps you send data from the CPU to the GPU. And so you need to learn how to use the API, and then you also need to know how to work with shaders. And shaders are basically GPU programs, right? That create the whole illusion of the games that you see, right? The lighting and stuff like that, and all of the visual effects. So for you to get something render on the screen, all of these all of these main components, they need to work together and perfectly for you to see something. Now, many times when you are new, you are going to either have issues getting your mathematics engine working right, or your OpenGL is not sending the right data, or your shader is completely, not working at all. And that's what makes, game engine development confusing, because, you know, none of those uh, topics are easy to understand, and you need to have a good idea of what's happening. So let me load up one field. I'm gonna load the asset, but as I'm loading it, I should go into my breakpoint and stop. And I'm gonna check the type of my object. So perfect. So my type is U4D model. Perfect. Now let's see if let me go for the next one. All right, so now for this one, I'm gonna use player 0. And for this one, what I'm going to do, I'm gonna select player and load the asset. And the type, player, perfect. Okay, cool. So that one is set. All right. So what I need to do now is basically, I don't like when this happens actually. All right, so now what I need to do now, and hopefully I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so what I need to do now is I needed to create a new class. I'm gonna call it Serializer. And then I'm gonna follow the steps that I outline here, right? First thing that this new class is gonna do, let's call it U for the Serializer, right? The first thing that this class is going to do is, or some of the behaviors or methods that I'm going to apply are that it should be able to read all the entities present in the scene graph. And it's going to load all of the entities properties into a structure, which means I have to create a structure and load them into a vector. Okay, shouldn't be that hard to do. So let's do this. Let's create, and let me come over here for 1 second. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm basically creating a folder that I need to create. Entity factory. Okay, so let me create a new folder. And I'm gonna call it a Serializer. Boom. All right. Okay, cool. So let me create a new folder here also. And I'm gonna call this one Serializer. All right, okay, cool. Cool. Now we're going to create our classes here. Okay, so I'm gonna call this U for the Serializer. And I want this to be part of iOS and macOS Serializer. So now I'm gonna create those two files. All right. They should show up here. Now, one thing that I need to tell you, so my whole game engine, was written using C++, right? But as you can see, I'm using Xcode, I'm using a Mac. My game engine is basically will work for Mac devices, right? As a matter of fact, I recently released a game to the test flight, which you can download and test out. And that game works for only iOS devices. Now, since I am using Xcode and I'm also using C++, for the C++ files to compile in Xcode, you need to change the extensions here, the HPP and the CPP. So the HPP needs to be changed to .h and CPP needs to be changed to Basically, you are going to be using the Objective-C++ compiler, not the Objective-C compiler. So you need to make those changes in order for your files to compile in Xcode. Else, they're not going to compile and you're going to get a bunch of errors. So it's a simple change that you have to do, but you have to do it. All right, so let's do this. Let's do the declaration for the serializer. Boom, private. I don't know what I'm gonna add here yet, but we'll find out soon. So for the serializer, this is the constructor class. Basically, this is the method that is called whenever you create a new instance of this class. Basically, you are doing a malloc. You are allocating memory when you're doing so. In case you come from C and you're wondering what's going on with this. All right. Well, you call malloc when you create new, which will create the instance of this class. Just making sure you get that. All right. So I'm going to put all of my class into a namespace because you should always do that. Else, if you don't, you may run into conflicts with other libraries. For example, another library may have the same method that my serializer may have. So you don't want to create those, conflicts, right? Crash, between methods. So I always recommend you to actually use namespaces. All right, so let's do this. Some of the methods that I need to do. Let me bring Adam here. So read entities from the same graph. Okay, I can bundle all of this up into one. I can just call this load entities. Boom. Load entities. And then I can call the other one void convert entities to binary. And here, most likely what I'm going to need to provide, I need to provide the name to my file name, which I'm going to come up with very soon. All right, so let's get this. All of this is here. Boom. Oh yeah, I haven't included a string. Boom. All right, that should fix that. Again, we need to make sure that all of this is within the same namespace. All right, so I haven't found a faster way to do this, but every time that I copy my methods into here, I always have to do this. I wonder if there's a better way to avoid me doing this manually, but in the meantime. All right, you know what? My serializer has to be a singleton, right? Yeah, I need to make sure this is a singleton. Cannot have it like a normal class. All right, so for that to work, then I need to do protected, and I'm going to move. By the way, a singleton is a class that only has one instance all throughout the lifetime of your application. In this case, a singleton would be the ideal way to define your serializer, because you don't want two serializers to be in your game engine. You only need one class, one instance to be in charge of saving the data, right? All right, so in my private, what I need to do, I need to do a static for the serializer and instance. I'm making my instance private because I don't want nobody else to have access to that. Now here static for the serializer shared instance. Boom, boom. That's my private. All right, so okay, so now what I'm gonna do over here for my static for the serializer, and so hold on, let me make sure I'm doing this correctly. I always tend to forget, so all right, obviously you're gonna have a static here. So you for the serializer instance equals to 0. All right. Now I also need my shared here. I'm basically defining a singleton here, guys. So in case you are wondering what in the world am I doing, and I want to take some time and explain what's happening here. Okay, so just give me 1 second and explain this. All right, so here, so we only want one instance of this class. That's it, right? So what we're gonna do is that the only way for you to create an instance of this class is by calling the share instance method, right? So whenever you call the share instance method, you are gonna check if my instance is equals to 0, right? Which is how we have set it here. And that's not how you write instance, right? Then I want to create a new this class, right? And if not, then I'll just return the instance that was created before. Instance, right? You can call this a null pointer or whatever, it's up to you, right? So, but basically, here's going to check, okay, if my instance is 0, then okay, fine, create a new instance. If not, right, if we already have an object, then you will return the object. So that's basically a singleton. It's as simple as that. All right. So now when I call the load entities, right, when I do the load entities, what I want to do is I want to do the following. I want to read all the entities, pressing in the sync graph, load the entities. Okay. All right, so this is what I want to do. What I need to do. Before I do this though, I'm going to go and modify my MGUI editor because I want to add a button that we will call the serializer, that will trigger the load entities, right? Okay, and cool. All right, so how am I going to do this? All right, how am I going to read all of the entities present in the sync graph? Well, for me to do this, I'm going to need an instance to my scene manager. U for the scene manager, and I'm going to need an instance to my U for the scene, and I'm going to also need to include my U for the world. All right. My scene manager basically has pointers to the current scene, and the scene has a pointer to the current world basically, right? So that's how I'm gonna do this. So how I'm gonna do this, how I'm going to do this is the following. You for the scene manager equals, now that my U for the scene manager is also a singleton. So you call this like this, right? Now you for the scene, I'm gonna get the pointer to my scene basically, my current scene that is being played. And for this one, what I have to do, scene manager, get current scene, and then I need to get a pointer to my world. And how I do this is by get game world, right? Now I have my game world right now. Now I need to iterate through all of the entities in my scene graph, right? So to do this, or what I have to do is you for the entity, and I may have to actually. All right, oh man, you have to do that, but okay. So child world next. All right, so for this one, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to iterate through all of this. So if my child is on a null pointer, child equals child next. All right, so here is where we're going to get the list of all that, the childs that I have present in my scene, right? What I need to check is if my child get entity type is equals to U for the is equals to model. Actually, let me do it like this. U for the engine model. Okay. All right. It's just for the heck of it. Let's do this. Let me add the logger here. Include U for the logger.h. And I'm going to create a logger here also, just for testing purposes. Logger, U for the logger, shared instance. Okay, and then here what I'm gonna do is say logger, log, name of entity of model, and I'm just gonna pass the name to it. So child get name, and I think I may have to do this. All right, cool. So now I need to go to my editor and add a button that will call this method. So my editor has its own render path, its own rendering path here called editor path. Why did I do this? Well, because when I was implementing ImGUI, I noticed that ImGUI would complain if I didn't move the editor into its own rendering path. In the beginning, I was combining it all, which was not a good idea to do. So I learned my lesson. All right, ImGUI, I'm kind of lost. And where is this one? Okay, I'm gonna put it here, all right? Because I don't want. I'm gonna put it within its own scope. In GUI, begin, and save. And what I want is I want to have my own button. Okay, so save entities, and then you also need to have an N. Okay, so if in GUI button, so basically what this means is that if I'm saving this, save, basically need to do whatever I'm gonna do here. All right, so let's do this. Let me add my serializer. Include you for the serializer.h. All right, here. So you for the serializer. And here basically I want to, just create an instance of the singleton, right? Shared instance. Boom, and that's it. Now what I'm going to do is serializer, call the method of my serializer, which is load entities, right? So basically, when I call this, when I click here, what should happen that on my logger window, I should see the names of all the models that I have basically load up, all right? So let's put this to a test and see if everything seems to work. All right, and I got an error. Let's see. What is the error? Okay, let's see. Let's go here. Undefined symbol, load entities. Huh, that's weird. Let me see. Oh, all right, okay, I got it. Boom, boom. And I forgot to do this also. All right. All right, so this should work now. All right, so let's run this. Okay, cool. So now let's see. Well, let's add a different, objects here. Load assets, player, ball. All right. So now where is my, oh, here it is, my save. Okay. Let's do this. So now if this works, it means that here in my output window, we should see at least three entity names, all right? The ball, the player, and this guy. So let's see, save, and boom, name of the model, ball, player, and 0. Now if we add more to this, feature 3, boom, field goal, and field goal 1, we should see more than that. Right, so that you can see. So now again, if I click, on save, right, then we should see all of these models. So which means that we're doing good. All right. So now let me stop this. And what do we want to do here? Okay. Well, here's where we are going to do something that usually you don't want to do when you're well, since I'm only going to be doing this once in a while, only when you click save, it will be okay. But ideally, you don't want to do dynamic casting at all because that takes too much time, and you definitely do not want to do that. But here, what I want to do is I need to cast these entities into my U4D model, right? Here I have U4D entity, and what I need to do is I need to cast my child into a U4D model. All right, so let's call the model, and I'm going to call dynamic cast. Yes, the type U4D model, and then my child, right? That's how it needs to be, if I'm not mistaken. And let me double check, actually, guys, because I don't recall. Dynamic cast, boom. Yeah, that seems to be correct. Okay. Boom, okay. Now, here is where I'm going to, basically, I need to create a struct that will store all of the properties. So basically, for example, here, right, we can get name, right? So I'm gonna just make this up right now. std string name would be model get name, right? std string class type. I should be able to get this model get class type. Now I should be able to also store my position model. Let's call it position. Could be model get absolute position. And then if for the vector rotation, then we can say model get absolute orientation, which I think that's that. Right, so now we can store all of this into a structure, right? Now I don't need the logger anymore, so I'm just going to remove it because we don't need the logger here. We already know that this works, right? So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to create a structure and that will hold all of this information, and then we're going to load this into a vector, as simple as that. So let's see, we have some time here now. So let me go into my constant and common protocols. Yeah, let's go here. All right. So let's just call this one type def struct. Now, what should we call this? Data entity saving entity saving serializer. Serializer. All right, entity serializer data. Boom. Entity serialize data. Telling you, man, sometimes coming out with names is kind of hard. All right, so std string name. Then what else do we need? Type, class type, class type. Then you for the. So you know what here? So I'm going to be converting this into binary, right? So I need to split my vector 3n into the independent components, the x, y, and z. But I'm gonna not do that for now. Position, but it's something that I need to keep in mind. And rotation. All right. So now that we have that, we can go to my here, include them into my common protocol. Come on. Common protocols. Boom. And then guess what? For each model that we have, we are going to create a structure for that, right? So this one was called what? Entity serialized data, and we're gonna call it like this: entity serialized data. All right. And we're gonna do basically this, right? Entity serialized data. Name would be model get name entity that class type would be model get class type entity that position would be model get absolute position get absolute orientation. Okay, cool. So now that we have all of that stored there, we don't need this. So we're good. However, we are forgetting one little thing. Yep, I meant that. We are forgetting one little thing. We need our container here. We need our container in here. So we're going to create a container and we should have moved the common protocols.h there and remove it from here. All right, so we're good here. And so since we are going to store this in a vector, we need to get the vector here. So include vector. All right, so std vector. This is the so entity serialize data container. All right. So we are basically going to store everything into here. Now you may be wondering, why do I use such a long name? I like to, you know, uh, use variables that basically, tell any user what exactly am I storing here, right? And many times that will require you to use long name variables. But the point is, that anyone will be able to understand what you are doing, in this particular instance, and not use cryptic names, um, in your code. Okay, so once I have this, right, I want to get this structure and I want to store it into my container. So I'm going to push this entity serialized data, boom, right? And boom, we should be done with this. So basically we have done load the entities properties into a structure and load them into a vector. So now, you know what, I shouldn't have removed my logger. Include logger. What am I doing? I'm sleepy, guys. All right. So let's do what we don't need to do. We don't need this because we can just check it here. I don't need this. I can just put a breakpoint and we should be okay. So I'm gonna put a breakpoint right here, right? I'm gonna say stop and cd cout stop, right? And so let's put a breakpoint here. So now at this point, if I check my container, I should be able to see all of the data for all of my models. All right. So let's run this again. And I know that this may take a while, but I don't think it will take a while anymore. Hey, Fanconi, how are you, man? How's it going? I don't know how much you catch up of the live stream, but basically I'm adding a serializer to the game engine. Basically, I'm adding a feature that will allow you to save all of your scene positions and orientations. Thank you, man. Thank you for following the channel. And in this live stream, basically, I worked on adding a feature that will allow you to save all of the entities that you have in your scene. For example, the positions, the orientations, so that whenever you load up the game at a later time where you want to work on your game, you will be able to have all of those entities. You will be able to load them and have them in the right orientation as you had them before. Thank you for coding. For how long have you been trying to make your own? Like, have you have you done your own and then have you tried to do your own but then failed, or is it like the same game engine that you have just been working on for a long time? Like, all right, so I know that this was going to take a long time to build because every time I modify the common protocols file or the constant file, it takes a long time. So let's see. But if this works, I'm actually glad because this is what I wanted to work on today, and I'm glad I didn't had any hiccups today with a live stream. So how far are you with your game engine fun coding? I mean, have you completed a mathematics engine, rendering system, physics collision? Like, where are you at with your engine? All right, I was gonna take a while. Well, in the meantime, as this is loading up, guys, if you are new to my game engine and you are wondering how can you start working on developing your own, if you go to my website, heroserrano.com, you're gonna see a link right on in the navigation bar, which says books. If you click there, it will take you to a list of books that I use to develop my own game engine. The first section of the article basically gives you the links to the books that will help you get started. For example, to build your own mathematics engine, your rendering system, and your physics engine. These are basically the basic components of a game engine. Once you have all of this working, um, then you will have a basic game engine. Of course, there's more for you to add after this, right? You are going to need to add a particle system, a camera system, on and on and on. My basic game engine took me about 3 years to build, 5 years to make a little bit stable. But ever since then, I've been working on it for about 8 years now, adding different systems. For example, particle system. Lately, now I'm adding the ImGUI, right? And I'm adding an editor, and now I'm adding a serializer, which will, allow you to, to save all of the objects. Um, so it takes a long time to develop your own game engine, but these are the books that will help you get started. Now, if you want to get a list of all the books that I used, I also provide that list, right? For you to use to review. And if you ever have a question, right, on a particular book, probably you are, undecided whether to buy a book or not. Just let me know. Send me a message on my Discord server, and I will be able to, tell you everything about the book, what I liked and what I didn't like about the book. For example, earlier I was talking to one of my members in my Discord server, and he wanted to know what is a good book for C++. Now, I recommended this book, Thinking in C++, and I told him, look, it's not a great book, but it's not a bad book either. It would not be something that I would tell you, look, this is an amazing book, because it is not. It is an okay book, which I read, and it taught me somewhat about C++. So like if you ever want to, if you're curious or concerned about a particular book before you pay it or buy it, feel free to contact me, and I'll be able to help you out. By the way, so join my Discord server, right? If you go to my website, right on the front page, you are gonna find actually a link to my Discord server. So feel free to join, and hopefully, guys, this works, because it's already 11:24, and I need to go to sleep, and because I work tomorrow. Let's see. See, I know exactly which files will take long to compile, and those two files will always take long to compile. That's why I take, I make sure I don't modify them as often as. All right, we're almost there, guys. But yes, if you have any questions, let me know. I know I keep asking you guys, hey, you have any questions? But I'm trying to make the live stream as entertaining and not as entertaining, but also very helpful to you, right? I want to provide value, either on how to develop a game engine, or coding wise, or my experience throughout the whole development. There were several times when I wanted to quit my own game engine, because it's really hard to do this, guys. It's not simple to do. So I have been there before, and I know exactly how it feels, and all the struggles. All right, so as a little test, let's add some models here. Load assets. Bleacher, let's add bleacher 2, and let's add the field, and let me add this one as this guy. Boom. All right, so now when I click save, I should go into this breakpoint, and I should have saved everything into that container. So click save, and boom. All right, so let's verify the content in this container. There's three, which have three models, right? So now, boom, there you go. So this is for the field. If you recall, I set the type to be, the class type to be field, the position, that's the position which is correct, and the rotation, which should be all zeros. Now the other one that I added was the bleacher, which is that, bleacher 2, U4D model. And then the third one, which is the player 0, which is, I'm sorry, I got that name wrong. Let me just double check this one. Boom, U4D model, cool. Now, one thing that I'm noticing here is that every time I load the entities, I need to make sure that my container is empty, or else if you click save, if you keep clicking on the save button, this vector is going to just load up, right? So clear, boom. Detective Pluto, that's a lot of books. Which books do you think one should start with? So yeah, so the books that I highlight here in the first part of the article, in the first section, these are the books that I recommend you to, the books that I recommend to get started. This set of books right here, right? If you need to review linear algebra, then this is a really good book. Either if you need to review it, or if you are new to linear algebra and you need to know what vectors are, matrices, transformations, etc. This is a really good book that I recommend you to get. Basically, number one is it explains the concept really well, but also it provides code snippets for you to use. Right, that's really helpful. Then once you know linear algebra, then the next step should be to learn computer graphics, right? And the two books that I recommend are OpenGL Super Bible and Graphics Shaders. I myself would recommend you to start out with this one, because this book will go through all of the theory of computer graphics. OpenGL is basically a medium that will help you transfer the data from the CPU to the GPU, right? So it's only an API, right? Knowing the API does not mean that you know computer graphics. It is better for you to understand computer graphics and then be able to use the API. Because once you know the API and you are able to transfer data, if you only focus on OpenGL and not on that theory, you will get stuck when you start working with shaders. Shaders are basically GPU programs that basically allow you to create all of the lighting and the whole effects, graphical effects that you see. Everything that you see on the screen is because of shaders. And once you have this set, if you want to add a physics engine, a physics system to your game engine, then you can use these books. I highly recommend you to use this book, Real-Time Collision Detection System, if you want to add a collision detection to your game engine. Believe me, there is no way that I would have been able to develop a collision system without that book, because that book is just, it's it's the best book on collision detection system. So I recommend you to use it. All right, so let me run this again, because I basically want to run this over and see if all of my models are actually being saved. Okay, so let me click on the field, and the field I'm going to set it as class field. Load the asset player. This one will be of type player, and then the bleachers here, U4D models, load assets. Okay, so now if I click save, I should go into here. Let me check the container, and I have my bleacher U4D model. That's correct. My player is of type player. That is correct. And my field type field. Cool. Now I'm going to run this again. And I'm going to reset this. Okay, and now I'm going to add something else. I'm going to add a field. I'm going to add a soccer ball. I'm going to add my opposite player. And okay, so as we can see here, we have 4 objects. So if I click on save, I should see 4, not 7. All right, there you go. I'm just making sure everything looks good. Bleacher, opposite player, ball, and field. All right, cool. So now this works. Now, what is next? Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate through this vector and convert everything into binary format, right? Into zeros and ones. And that will be saved into a file, right? That's the whole serialization part. I'm going to iterate through all of the data, the data that I saved in the vectors, and convert that into binary, and that will be saved to a file, which I will be able to later on, deserialize all of that, right? Read the file and read the binary data and convert that into my models, right? I'm going to be able to read all of the properties that I have saved and then go in reverse and create the models, which will allow you to, load up your saved file and have all of your models back into the scene. All right, guys, it's almost time for me to go to sleep because I do work tomorrow. Thank you guys for joining this live stream. I want to try to go live again on Thursday. I'm going to try, so if you haven't done so, subscribe to my channel, and also please click the like button if you ended up liking this live stream. It will really help me out. And also don't forget to join my Discord server. All right, guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.